All right, and Mike, if you want to start recording, I'll start muting everyone and we'll get on the way.
All right, well, let's have an advertisement while we wait. All right, thank you, everyone. Welcome to the April Space Association meeting, virtual meeting. Thanks for joining us tonight. Obviously, we normally have a physical meeting in South Melbourne, here in Melbourne, but we've been bumped onto virtual, and this is the second one we've had. So thanks for coming along and joining in. Should have a really good night tonight, and I'm just going to do a really quick introduction to the group and what we do, and then we'll get started in the main feature. I hope everyone can hear me. Just wave your arms around if you can't. So tonight, the program will just get started. As I mentioned, we're just going to do a couple of bits of news for the association. Then we've got our feature, which is Australia in Space. We've got several expert guests with us. Adam Seedsman from the Australian Space Agency, Adam Gilmore from Gilmore Space, Andrew Yusensky from Valiant Space, Herb Astia from Newman Space, and apparently Herb's daughter's got her birthday today, so he might be a bit in and out. And a late change, Peter Williams has joined us from Southern Launch, the sales director. Unfortunately, Lloyd became unwell tonight, so unable to join us. And then we'll have a bit of time, hopefully at the end, for a Q&A. And then we've got Angelo De Grazia, who's our news correspondent, will give us a wrap-up of news towards the end. So let's get straight into it. Oh, yeah, so some news. Obviously, we had just recently had the Apollo 13 50th anniversary, which took place 12th to the 18th of April. And for those who don't know, the Space Association had organised a special event here in Melbourne. Unfortunately, that had to be cancelled with the coronavirus thing. So some people had booked tickets, including myself. So they would automatically been refunded. I got my refund just the other day. Some people may have bought it at the box office. So if you haven't done that already, contact the Sun Theatre and they'll organise your refund. So maybe we'll do that for the 55th next few years' time. We did, however, have an Apollo 13 in Australia online event last week, and it was really, really good. We had a lot of people turn up. We had three people from the actual tracking station, Mike Dean, John Saxon and Bruce Window. Mike and John were from Honeysuckle Creek. Bruce was from Tibnabilla and went up to Parkes to help out with the very rapid configuration of Parkes to help out on the 13. Fortunately, at the time, it wasn't needed, but it was an amazing bit of work that they went through for that. And then we had Colin McKellar, who's a space historian who runs the Honeysuckle Creek website. So if you haven't been there, honeysucklecreek.net, go there. You will be lost. If you're a space geek like me, you'll be there for hours or even weeks. We also had Fred Hayes, who joined us. I recorded an interview with him the morning of the presentation, and we ran that. And then during the presentation, we actually had Joe Kerwin, who was one of the key Capcoms during Apollo 13. Every time I tuned in, he seemed to be on, so I don't know whether he ever slept, but he was great. And he obviously then later on flew on Skylab. So he actually joined us for the event and gave us some really interesting insights too. So if you weren't able to make it, we did record the whole thing and uploaded it to our YouTube channel. So it's called Apollo 13 in Australia 50th anniversary. So if you go to our YouTube channel, easiest way to do it, just go to our website, space.asn.au, click on the YouTube icon, and it'll take you straight there so you can watch it. It goes about 3.5 hours. It was supposed to go two hours, but everyone had such a good time, it just went on. So it was a great night. In fact, in some ways, it was better than what we'd had bridging the pan because Joe Kerwin and all these other people joined us. So there you go. Other things, we as an association, we're focused on doing different things, educating the public and looking forward and back. We're going to look later on forward with space news, which Angela will do towards the end of the night. But we've been in touch with the people that made the film Searching for Skylab. So we've penciled in a special event to show that film, which is a documentary that came out late last year by Dwight Stephen Bonecki, and it's absolutely incredible. A couple of us saw it as a preview at Space Fest in 2018. They hadn't quite finished it at that stage, but it focuses on Skylab, and it's quite fantastic. So it got finished, and as I say, it was released November 2018. There we go. So what we're planning to do, well, assuming all the COVID-19 nonsense is out of the way, is probably have a special event, possibly at the Sun Theatre in Yarraville here in Melbourne. We've done a few things with them, and they've been fantastic and very keen supporters of us and what we do. We had an Apollo 11 50th last year with them, and it was great. So we're looking at maybe July the 11th, which I believe is a Saturday, here in Melbourne. So Saturday. So keep an eye on your emails and our social media, and we'll let you know about that. Hopefully we'll all be out of hibernation by July. Goodness me, I hope so. I think we'll all be doing our heading by that stage. All right, and so there's the Sun Theatre in Yarraville. Once again, we haven't confirmed it yet, but it's penciled in. Joe Kerwin, I spoke to him the other night, and he's very keen to be involved, and a lovely guy, full of stories. He's great. And also the director, Dwight Stephen Bonecki. And once again, we might have some also. So Dwight's got great contacts with Jack Lousmer and Ed Gibson as well, so they might even join us in some capacity. So once again, details to be finalised at this stage. For those people who are members of a association, we're the Space Association of Australia, so we do have an annual general meeting, which we're supposed to have in May. So obviously with all the COVID-19 thing, we're going to be going virtual. We've been assured by the regulators that we're able to do that. So we're just working out the final technical arrangements around that. Obviously with AGMs, there's a possibility for votes and that sort of thing. So we're going to put in a parallel system that will allow us for anonymous real-time voting. So details to be announced on that. So usual AGM type stuff. We will send notification and all the requisite details about that prior to the meeting, along with proxy forms, etc. And at this stage, we're penciling in to have it on Monday the 18th, which will be 1 week before our next public meeting on the 25th. So once again, if you remember, you'll get details about that next week or two, probably at this stage. Bit of sad news. We heard about the death of Mervyn Binns, who is the husband of Helena Binns, who's been a long-time member of the association. Merv Binns is a famous Melbourne science fiction character, Mr. Science Fiction they called him. He formed the Melbourne Science Fiction Club, and he also started the Space Age books here in Melbourne and published Australian Science Fiction News booklet. So I think a lot of people might be aware of Merv. He received a lot of awards, and I believe he passed away on April the 7th. So Helena, we sent a card on the association's behalf of condolence to Helena. I believe because of all the restrictions, they're just going to be having a private service, and there may be some other thing that happens later on. We're all out of the bunker. So Valet Mervyn. All right, so that's kind of about it. Just for those people who are not aware, the association, we do run these public meetings, either in person or online. So the formula for our meetings is the fourth Monday of each month. So our next meeting will be virtual, the 25th of May. The venue we normally meet at has indicated that they're going to be closed down until June. So we're hoping that we have our first physical meeting on the 22nd of June. But the next meeting, the virtual meeting, will be the 25th of May. So put that in your calendar there. All right, there we go. So that's how you should be dressed for the next meeting, everybody. As I mentioned, we are a non-profit group. We just run on memberships to run all of our things. For those who are not aware, we also run a weekly radio show, so that gets funded by the memberships. And as Groucho says, well, I'll let you read it. All right, let's get on with things. Okay, so we're going to get on to our feature tonight, which is Australia in Space. So I believe we do have, oh, that's the end of my screen sharing. I'll turn that off. Right, so as I've indicated, we've got a range of different people from high-profile people from the space scene in Australia, and as I indicated at the in the introduction there, we're going to be, or the invitation, we've got Adam Seedsman from the Australian Space Agency, Adam Gilmore from Gilmore Space Technologies, Andrew Yusinski from Valiant Space, Herv Astier from Newman Space, and Peter Williams from Southern Launch. So, Adam, I see you're there somewhere. There's so many faces on the screen. Are you ready to take over? And I'll hand it over to you. I'll mute my microphone and let you go for it. So, yeah, if we can keep to about 10 minutes, it'd be great. But all right.
Sure thing.
Thanks, Adam.
All right.
Welcome.
Thanks very much for the opportunity, Peter. I've got a few slides that I'd love to share. I know that some of you will have seen this before. The Space Agency has been pretty big about getting out and making sure that we engage with people. So, but for me, it's perhaps a little bit talking points and make sure that I don't miss out on some things. Tell you a little bit about what the Space Agency has been doing since our formation, some of the things that we've got coming up and our plan moving ahead, and particularly the exciting initiative with NASA on the Moon to Mars agenda. So if you bear with me for just one moment, I'll try and get the slides to present. So I'll just switch over now. And that should start in a moment. Okay, can everybody see that?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. All right, very good. So for those who don't know me, my name is Adam Seedsman. I'm the Executive Director of Strategy and Policy at the Australian Space Agency. I'm the first person to hold this role, and I'm very fortunate and very grateful to have the opportunity. Also very grateful to be here today and have the opportunity to talk to the Australian Space Association, especially on a panel with some really great Australian businesses, you know, with Southern Launch and Gilmore and the others. I'm really looking forward to hear what these guys have got to say and the work that they're doing. I know about some of it, but it's really exciting stuff. One thing that I really want to do is acknowledge the traditional owners of country here in Australia and recognise their continuing connection to land, water, culture and the skies. The Australian Space Agency pays our respects to elders past, present and emerging. I think it's always important to start talking about the purpose of the agency. We have the role to transform and grow Australia's space industry, to lift the broader economy and inspires and improves the lives of Australians, and also importantly to engage nationally and internationally. We're a little different to other agencies. We have a very clear focus on lifting the economy, lifting Australia's space sector, and it grows out of the work that the head of the agency, Dr. Megan Clark, did in the expert reference group before the formation of the agency, where she and those other experts went around and learned about the capability that was here in Australia and built the case for the existence of the Space Agency. And that's really why we're here today, is to bring together the agencies, bring together the industries, provide a vision and a focus for Australia in space. You know, we've always been here. We've worked with the US and other countries since the early days, and I think everybody here will be familiar with many aspects of our history. So there'll be no surprises there. I've already spoken about the purpose, but the government set an objective for us. Our role is to triple the size of Australia's space economy. It was measured by Dr. Clark and her associates a couple of years ago to be $3.9 billion. So we want to lift that value to the economy to $12 billion within 10 years, and to create an additional 20,000 jobs. For those that haven't seen it, please take some time to read Advancing Space, which is our strategy, or the government strategy, to grow the space sector over the next 10 years. This is a really important document for us because through this document, the government's actually agreed those 7 priorities there that you can see on the screen around PNT, Earth observation, communication technologies, SSA, space situational awareness, leapfrog R&D, robotics, automation, which also captures AI and those technologies, and access to space. Certainly, not least considering some of the other people that will be talking today. Really excited to hear about those capabilities.
Sorry, Adam, that's not really displaying properly. Do you mind
really? Okay.
stopping and starting that again?
All right. So, sorry, stopping the presentation and restarting, or just the reloading the slide?
Maybe try. Go. Yeah, it's doing it for that slide as well. We can see that one now. Yeah.
You can see it.
So the one that says Australian space sector at the top with purpose and priorities, is that displaying okay?
Yeah.
Fantastic. So we've got the priorities, we've got the objectives, we know what we need to do, and there's 4 things that we know that we need to do. We need to engage internationally, and like I said before, Australia's been doing that since the early days. But the formation of the Australian Space Agency has been a huge catalyst to our international engagement. Stealing her thunder a little bit, Dr. Clark likes to say that when she was in the CSIRO, she was really challenged to get engaged with NASA. But the minute she was the head of the Australian Space Agency, she had a letter from the administrator of NASA. So Jim Bridenstine was really keen to get engaged with us. And that's just as an anecdote to talk about how exciting and how important that it is. We've gone out and we've engaged with a whole lot of different international space agencies. We've got those agreements and engagements, and we're in a better place than we are to lift the Australian space sector, both our research sector, but also our industry, and help them get engaged internationally, because we're not going to triple the size of the space sector unless we are engaging internationally. So we know that's the first thing. The second thing is to increase our national capability. There's a whole lot of things that we do here really well, but we know that we need to lift it. We haven't had as strong an space ecosystem here in Australia from an industrial perspective as some other countries. And what we really need to do is to make sure that we've got that best of breed capability, so that international organisations, international prime contractors and companies want to look to Australia for our expertise more than they already do. The third element there is about being responsible. Australia is very concerned about being a responsible citizen internationally. As you would all know, we're signatories to the major treaties, and so how we engage in that internationally is really important, but also in the context of our bilateral treaties as well. And we also need to protect Australia and ensure that activities, space launches and returns are conducted safely. So very much about building a culture of responsibility, understanding those obligations, understanding what good behaviour in that context means. Lastly, inspiring the future workforce, and that's a huge part of what we have to do. And again, I'll use the words of the Deputy Head, Anthony Murphy, who likes to say that there's 2 things that inspire young kids. One of them is space, and the other thing is dinosaurs. And sooner or later they grow out of dinosaurs. So we really want to make sure that we're using space as an inspiration, not just for young space enthusiasts, but also for space entrepreneurs. We want to demonstrate that space is a good investment, and how investors can engage in the space sector to help grow the Australian capability. And the Australian government has made a pretty big commitment. You can see there on the screen the commitments that have been made since the establishment of the agency in 2018. And obviously, not all of that's with us. We've got the 223 million that are committed in the forward estimates to the operation of the agency and the delivery of the programs, not talk about those in a moment. The government's committed $325 million to the space-based augmentation system and the national positioning infrastructure with Geoscience Australia. 55 million to the new SmartSat CRC, which is hugely exciting. You know, they have their home right with us, with the head of the space agency down in Adelaide, so that's pretty exciting. And of course, our friends at CSIRO have got their own investment, so $26 million worth of space science and research activities there. And notwithstanding the activities of CSIRO conduct, for example, for European Space Agency and for NASA, which are additional to that. And these are the programs that we've got underway at the moment. Announced with the establishment of the agency was the International Space Investment Initiative. That's $15 million in grants. Now, those grants closed a little while ago. The agency's been going through the evaluation and assessment process for those applications, and the government will be coming forward with announcements on those soon. So that's pretty exciting. The Space Infrastructure Fund, that was also announced when we launched the strategy, $19.5 million to do 7 projects. Now, I'm not sure what it would look like on your screen, so I'll just quickly run through them. We're building a mission control facility in South Australia, as well as a robotics automation and AI command and control centre in Western Australia, and a space data analysis facility in WA as well. Those 3 are coming along soon. We've had the grant applications in particular for the grant processes for the robotics command and control and the mission control centre. So there'll be announcements about those very soon. We're building new tracking facilities with the University of Tasmania to improve our tracking capabilities here in Australia. And in the future, we'll be investing in a space manufacturing capability in Western Sydney, as well as the space payload qualification facilities and pathway to launch, which is very much about building the capability and capacity within the agency to support launch activities in Australia. Now, we've also got a further $6 million for the Space Discovery Centre, which will be a national facility that will be co-located with our headquarters in Adelaide, which is quite exciting. And we'll be investing $150 million with Australian businesses and researchers to work with NASA on their Moon to Mars mission. I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail in just a moment.
Hi, Adam. Yeah, we're back to the half the slide again, and for this one as well.
Okay.
Is there a different way that you can share rather than what? Oh, that one's just come good again. Did you have to click in it or something, or?
Yeah, possibly. Can you see the Moon to Mars slide?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
It appears though when you reloaded the slide, every time it came up okay the second time.
Okay, so what I might do then is I'll just reload. I've only got one more slide after this, but I'll reload it twice when I get to it. Would you like me to just pause for a moment on the program slide?
That one's good as well, the 3 programs.
So if you
Can
have
you
a look
please
on
reload?
if you have a look on my screen, you can see what you actually look like there.
Okay, just a moment. Sorry, I'll just need to. I'm doing this on my iPad, so I'll need to switch back to Zoom. Give me a moment. Sorry, go again. Right. Okay, so I can see the Zoom slide there. That's working. How about I'm back on the Moon to Mars slide. How about I press on with this? I don't want to be hogging the time. I'd really like to give my other colleagues the opportunity to speak. So I'll press through this one pretty quickly. In September last year, the Prime Minister launched our new partnership with NASA, and hugely exciting day for us. The government to actually come forward with $150 million for Australian businesses and researchers, and that's a really huge deal. We've never had anything like this before. Everybody knows the role that Australia played in the Apollo missions, the ongoing collaboration that we've had with NASA, as well as the other capabilities that we've got here. But now with this investment, we've got the opportunity to bring forward some really great Australian capabilities. And I'll talk about this. This is the 3 program slides. I'll just drop back to the 3 program slide. I hope that hopefully that works. we're delivering, the Australian Space Agency will deliver 3 initiatives to help us get connected with NASA. The first one's a supply chain program. First of all, I should say, each of these elements will have about $50 million invested in each of them. And for those of you that haven't seen it, we've actually published a consultation paper on the design of the programs, and we very recently went around and did a national consultation in all of the state territory capitals, where we asked people to come in and tell us what they thought about the design of these programs. So we've taken that feedback, and we're working through the design process at the moment, in particular for the supply chain program, and the second element, which is we're calling the demonstrator program. The first element is about getting Australian businesses and suppliers connected with NASA, with the Moon to Mars program, and with the other partners. We already know that Australia competes in really competitive markets like defence and aerospace. One example that we use is that we're familiar with is the Joint Strike Fighter program, where we've had about $1.5 billion in contracts that have gone through that program to Australian businesses that needed to step up and engage in that program. And I know it's not an exact parallel, but very much the challenges in entering the defence and aerospace sector at that very high level are analogous to the space sector. So we're investing here to help Australians get connected. So we're going to have a grant program through that. We're also going to have facilitation and business support running with other partners like the Entrepreneurs Program, through the Department of Industry, as well as the Australian Trade and Investment Commission. The second element is a demonstrator program. So what we want to do is find those best of breed capabilities that we have in Australia that will add value to Moon to Mars and bring value to Australia and to our broader economy. So we'll be running a grants program to identify and to lift up a relatively small number of programs that we think are the best and that line up with those Moon to Mars opportunities, and invest a relatively small amount of money. And I won't go into the details on this at this point. And that will lead into the Trailblazer program, which will be a flagship element, is the flagship element of this investment. So $50 million into that program. It's not a lot compared to a NASA or an ESA program, but we're very grateful to have the opportunity to show what Australia can do. And this will bring forward our flagship element that will have Australian capability and demonstrate the best of what we can do. So they're very much our plans for the future. I'll just drop on to the last slide. But the other thing I will add, even though I don't have a slide for this, and what I might actually do is stop presenting here and flip back to my other screen. There we go. Nobody could have foreseen the COVID-19 events as they occurred, this year. And so, to this end, we're all engaging in the impact of that. And our role in the Space Agency, in particular, sitting inside the industry department, is we're very close to the economic agenda. So how we recover from that, and what the next steps will be. So we're working very closely. You will have all heard our Minister, Karen Andrews, talking about how industry is going to recover from this. She's keeping space as a part of the narrative. We know she's very much committed to the space sector. So we're all aware of the impact that space has on our everyday lives, through position navigation and timing, through communications capabilities, and for example, how space can add value in the Earth observation sector for bushfire management, something that's very fresh in our memory. So we're working with all of our other Commonwealth agencies and our friends in the state and territory governments to really ensure that we're part of that agenda going forward.
Fantastic.
Thanks very much for the opportunity.
Thanks, Adam.
Yes, I have gone well over time, so I'm very sorry about that.
I had a crash in between all that, so I missed a bit of it, but I'll be able to catch up on the recording. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks
Thank
very
you.
much, Peter.
All right, so up next, we've got Adam Gilmore from Gilmore Space Technology. Ready to go there, Adam?
Yep, I'm all good. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Thanks, Adam Seedsman. You've always been a champion, and appreciate everything you've done so far. And hi to everybody else. We've had a pretty exciting start to the year. Team's up to 50 staff now, and we've managed to get a lot of senior rocket engineers from all around the world into the company, which we really needed. And we've locked in the design of the vehicle, and we've got a preliminary design, and we've started testing components of the vehicle, everything from rocket engines to composite tanks, to thrust vector control systems, avionics, and software. So all parts of the rocket we are actually started testing already, and this is going to be a year of testing for us. So we've got a lot of engine tests ahead of us, and a lot of other tests on the structure of the rocket as well. And it's been really good. I mean, we're venture backing, and they've been putting a lot of pressure on us to show results. So we've got a timetable of milestones for the year. And in the first quarter, we had about 10 milestones for the first quarter, and we hit 9 out of the 10. And we're completing the 10th one tomorrow. So our investors are starting to see some traction in the company, which is good. And I think it's going to be a very good year for us. We've locked down the fuel we're going to use. We've gotten a lot of customer interest. It's been pretty good. I think, you hear stories about a lot of rocket companies starting in the world, and, they're really, really overblown. There's not a lot of companies that are what I'd call 2 or 3 years away from launch. And there's been a few that have kind of failed in the last 12 to 18 months. And we're not really seeing a lot of competition around at the moment. So there's a certain payload class that we're looking at that some of our competitors can't do. So we're looking pretty good. I think our biggest challenge is getting the technology done. I started the company 7 years ago. We started building rockets about 5 years ago. And every year that I keep getting more and more into the business, I realize how much harder and harder it is to build a rocket. And, that hardness has really hit home in the last 3 months as we've gone through the preliminary design. And, there's Excel spreadsheets that are miles long, full of components and configuration management and everything you can think of. So it is a very complicated beast to design, but we're giving it a good shot, and I'm pretty confident we're going to get there. So, I hope we launch in 2022. We're trying to launch in the early stage of 2022. COVID's slowed us down a little bit. The investors are saying that the pool of money to invest in space is not dying, but slowing down a bit. And they've told us to kind of relax a bit on heavily growing. So we're going to have to be very careful on how much money we spend for, say, the next 12 months, which is frustrating because we're at a point where, we're proving technology, it's working. I've never had so many things work in the business, like normally you have something work and then something fails, but we've had like success after success after success, which has been fantastic. So, COVID has been very painful for us, but, we've got enough money to survive for quite a while, and we're being very careful with it. And I think I'm not super worried about the long run. It's just more the short run. So, I certainly hope that we can get some of that Artemis Moon Mars money. That will really help. I know Adam's listening. And, anything we can get is good. And, the Queensland government released a space policy a couple of months ago, right before COVID struck. So they've kind of been very engaged in COVID, but I think, as we recover in the months ahead, they're going to come back out and start to invest money in the industry, which is really good. So generally, I'm very positive. As hard as it becomes to build a rocket, I'm still adamant that we can build one, and we've got a really good team of people that have done it before. And it's amazing when you hire rocket engineers that have already built a rocket. Their attitude is quite amazing, because you look at it and you think, that's impossible, we've done it. We can do it. That's not a big deal. We'll just do that or change it around. And it's a very refreshing attitude to have. So it's good. That's about it for my update.
Thanks, Adam. That was great. Hopefully we'll have an opportunity at the end to ask a few questions and get a bit more detail if people are interested in that. Thank you. It was really good. Appreciate that. Is Andrew Usinski there? I've got a whole lot of thumbnails on screen.
Can you hear me?
Oh, okay. Yeah. You good to go, Andrew?
Yeah, I am.
All right.
I am, Peter. Thanks.
I'll go ahead and mute myself, and I like your picture in the background, by the way.
Oh, yeah. I like it too. Thanks.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. So g'day everyone. My name's Andrew. I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders of Valiant Space, and we're developing technology to land payloads on the moon. And to give you a bit of an idea as to why we're doing that, let me take you back to 2007, and that's when the Google Lunar X Prize started. And out of all the groups that participated, Space IL from Israel was the only one who got the closest to the moon. And at Valiant, we were all really inspired by their journey, and we all watched on as the landing attempt began for that mission. And unfortunately, minutes until touchdown, there was a failure, and it was a software failure caused by human error. And this was a $100 million mission, and yet there was still insufficient means to validate and reduce the kind of risks that put the mission in jeopardy and ultimately caused the catastrophic failure. Because at the end of the day, you can't do a practice moon landing mission. It's just too expensive, too prohibitive. And when you can't practice something cheaply or rapidly, you can't really get that much better at it. And so you can't get better at landing on the moon if that's the case. And that's when Valiant Space was born, from myself and my co-founders. And we want to ultimately help humanity get better at landing on the moon much more regularly. And simply put, we want to take the moonshot mentality out of a moonshot. We want to make it significantly easier. So the obvious follow-on question to that is, how do we do that? How do we achieve it? What are the necessary steps to make going back to the moon a more routine task? Well, we're solving these high risk and high cost problems by introducing the means to boost the reliability of these very complex systems that Adam touched on, the challenges that exist with rocket building. It's very high stakes challenges. We're building the ability to boost that reliability of those systems here on Earth before they actually fly. And fundamentally, lunar missions themselves, they are doable. Gone are the days of needing to be a superpower. The new space approach has meant that a lot of commercial opportunities previously unforeseen in space are now being opened up. And going to the moon will become a commercially viable endeavor. And I'm sure many different ventures that we can't even think of today will come out of that ability to go back. But at this point, things need to get a lot cheaper, a lot less risky, and a lot more reliable. So to achieve this, we're taking on the reusability philosophy, but not quite in the way that you might think from someone like SpaceX. We're building a hopper vehicle. So this is a reusable vertical takeoff and landing rocket, which is terrestrially based, which is going to allow rapid testing of the propulsion systems, the control systems, and the vehicle architecture overall, to be able to achieve the precision landings and hops in and around the moon that we want to provide to our customers. So the hopper itself will take off, fly a specified trajectory, and then land, all the while gathering data on system performances throughout the flight. And so should there be any adjustments needing to be made on just after a flight has been conducted, those tweaks can be made on site, and the hopper can fly that exact same trajectory with a turnaround within the same day. And that's giving an unprecedented level of hardware in the loop simulation and rapid prototyping that really hasn't been possible for these types of space systems previously. So this is critical because it helps build that operational and full system experience and understanding that you need when taking on these challenges. Because ultimately, an active lunar economy depends upon the ease of access to get there. Just like access to space, and just how we've seen in recent years how all these ventures and capabilities in low Earth orbit have been unlocked because of companies like SpaceX who have reduced the cost to get there significantly. And other companies such as Gilmore and other small satellite launchers are bringing that capability more and more. And right now, on the lunar perspective, that innovation that we've seen in access to space in general is currently getting blocked by the expense and the risk that is associated with testing those systems. So that's where Valiant Space fits in with our value, is that we can test those systems and build them and operate a lot quicker to be able to get customers' payloads to the moon with cutting edge technology. So this kind of leads well into my next point, which is on collaboration, which is another huge part of the journey. Beresheet is an excellent example of where collaboration works really well. And in our case, we need a ride to space ground tracking equipment. We need scientific payloads and testing facilities. And all these capabilities are actually getting built here in Australia, which is really exciting to see. And we want to inspire others to take on these kinds of moon challenges and to collaborate and build a capability that will see humanity prosper in cislunar space and in deep space overall. And we also think it's really important that the government support that exists nurtures these ambitious ventures. And so we're very excited to hear more about what lies ahead of us with the Moon to Mars initiative. And we think that a lot of our projects are fantastic opportunities that align very closely with the desired outcomes of the initiative. And of course, right now we're targeting the moon first, but our pathway and our technology development will enable further exploration to Mars and beyond and to other planetary bodies. So we're really excited, and we know that this can all be done in Australia. Of course, it's an international effort, but Australia can have a significant impact on the global industry, and we want to really take part in that. But I guess a little bit more of a specific update as to what we've been working on so far. We've been focusing our efforts on the rocket propulsion systems. You might have seen our most recent hot fire test of our liquid fueled rocket, which was successful. That is going to power our hopper vehicle. So that's our first iteration. We're going to continue developing that until it's ready for our first hopper vehicle. We're also working hard on the other systems needed. And so, yeah, definitely stay tuned to hear more about our progress there. So, yeah, I've spoken a bit about the collaboration and some of the first few problems we're going to be solving. And we're really eager to talk with whoever wants to be updated, get in touch, or collaborate with us and ultimately share the journey with us to the moon. So, yeah, you can contact me through my digital business card, which one of the Valiant Space team has just posted. Brian, thank you. And yeah, if you have any questions, happy to answer any.
Thank you, Andrew. That was fascinating. I've got a million questions, but in order to keep things moving, I'm going to hold them off until the end, but it sounds fascinating. So thank you for that. It was excellent. All right. So we'll move right along. So is Herb there?
Yes, I am.
Hey, how are you? Happy birthday to your daughter.
Thank you
Sorry to
very much.
interrupt that.
No worries. Thank you for having me here. First time with the group, so I really look forward to being involved in the future also with this group. Yeah, Peter asked me to provide a quick update on Human Space for those of you who may not know what we do. So Human Space is coming from the name of Dr. Paddy Newman, who I'm assuming a lot of you may know. Paddy was a PhD student at the University of Sydney, working in our plasma deposition lab, and came up with the idea of using basically, building a plasma system for production for CubeSats or small spacecraft. So that was end of 2015 when they incorporated the company. Reasonably quickly after that, moved to South Australia, which proved to be quite good for us at the moment with space agency next door, of course. Anyway, so I joined the company a bit more than a year ago now with 5 people. We grew that team with a number of recent additions to 8 with background from Airbus, Thales, and Boeing. So we bring a bit more expertise, if you want, from our project management and engineering point of view. So we spent the last few months really moving from the R&D, or the initial R&D, because we of course keep doing that, to our first engineering model. So what we do is, our aim is to develop a 1-unit form factor propulsion system for, at this time, 3 units or 6 unit CubeSat. And what we do, it's a pulse cathodic arc system. So we're using solid conductive fuel rods, metal, as fuel for our system. So it's very compact, it's very safe. There are no tanks, pipes, not a pressurized system, and there are no moving parts. So from a logistic perspective and launch perspective, it's extremely safe. The system itself, it's designed to use about 40 watts of power. We can do it with less, so it depends how often you want to fire the system. And with that, we can do several thousands of ISP, depending on the type of fuel you're using, of course. And the aim of the design that we have today is to have a total impulse between 3 and 5 kilonewtons second. The other interesting bit with our system is that it is scalable. Initially, when Paddy came up with the idea of the University of Sydney, it was actually a very large system, so we scaled that down. So our engineering model at the moment is just about this 1 cubic form factor, 1 unit form factor, sorry. And like I said, 40 watts. However, we had some discussions with large companies that said, look, very interesting for CubeSats, but we are looking at bigger sats, and we like the technology, but we want to see it much bigger. So they gave us kind of a challenge to show if we can do the scalability up, mentioning 4 kilowatt system. So end of last year, we actually built a tier 4 level kilowatt system. And that was to show that, yes, it does work, from a simple system. But it was also a way for us to get more power into it and to accelerate our testing. So where we are now, we have designed our Tier 5 model. We have built the different elements. We're just doing the assembly as we speak. And then, similar to Adam mentioning that before, we are embarking on a test campaign that, ultimately in the very short term is impacted by COVID because we cannot travel. And so that limits the testing we can do here in Adelaide. But this is where we are. Once we have that testing done and we move up the tier level, of course, then our aim is to be able to fly the system as soon as possible, as everybody wants. The initial goal was end 21 to have the first flight. With COVID and everything slowing down at the moment, I think we're looking more seriously at 2022. And we're looking at 3 missions at the moment, nothing being set yet, but the idea will have to be one as a payload with a service provider. One is an international mission involving European people and other companies here in Australia. And the last one that we are just starting to consider, and that might be the one moving faster actually, will be a technology demonstration entirely based in Australia. Not yet including the launch, but we could eventually do that too, with local partners, of course. So that's about it for where we are. Happy to take some questions later on. Obviously, we're also keeping a very close eye on what the Space Agency is doing. We approach them also with some ideas and stuff we want to do. We are about to start de-risking, doing a feasibility study to de-risk a little bit of proposal for a mission to fit under the Moon to Mars program. So, but we'll see when we make a bit more progress what is possible or not. That's about it. I cannot hear you. You're probably on mute, Peter.
Okay, I've just unmuted. Thank you, Herb. That was excellent. Fantastic.
You're welcome.
Very good. As I say, we've got lots of questions, and actually really doing well on time, everybody. So we'll have lots of questions at the end. So this is actually going to be a really nice session. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that, and taking the time out for my daughter's birthday as well. Are you going to be able to stay around now, or do you want to take some questions now and then go to your daughter's?
No, I'll stay a little bit. All right.
All right. No problem. So we've just got one more presenter, and that is Peter Williams, who's a last-minute substitute. Are you there, Peter, from Southern Launch? Welcome. Thank you for joining us. Sorry to be at Lloyd.
Yeah, unfortunately, Lloyd's a bit under the weather, so he's delegated to me. Hopefully, he gets a good night's sleep.
Oh, that's good. All right. That's the next question, isn't it?
Thanks for having me.
All right. I'll mute myself and let you go for it. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen and put up a small presentation if I can. So thanks for having me along tonight. My first time as well being involved with your group, so I look forward to further engagement. Southern Launch is not a rocket company. We're not building payloads or satellites, but we are building the facilities to help people get to space. So we're hoping to close the loop between the small satellite growth that's happening at the moment and getting safe and timely access to space. We started about 3 years ago in 2017. Lloyd founded it and is now our CEO. And as you look at the coastline around Australia, you see that compared to other launch sites around the world, and I'm looking now at the two charts on the right that show major shipping traffic and major air traffic densities, there's very little traffic at the bottom of South Australia, which is where Lloyd ended up deciding that there was a great opportunity to provide a launch facility that would not be restricted by limitations on flight traffic, maritime traffic, pesky population areas. You can launch to the south and the next destination is Antarctica, which is 3,000 kilometres away. So very safe, very accessible. The site is just near Port Lincoln. If you look at the maps down the bottom there, you can see Adelaide's about a 35-minute flight away to the east. And Whalers Way, which is the launch site that we're building, is about a 35-minute drive just south of Port Lincoln. Port Lincoln is well serviced by air traffic, by having a good port, and it's a 16,000 population there. So it has all the things that you need in terms of industrial support, accommodation, schools, all the things that you might need if you're operating a campaign in this part of the world for your staff to come out and be a part of that. We are looking at, I guess, a gold, silver and bronze build of the site. And we have some architect's drawings just shown on the left there of a fairly basic facility, which will have an assembly building, a launch pad, the fueling capabilities for bunding, and other bits and pieces that are required. And depending on the requirements that we find from our customers, we'll determine to what level of build we go with. At the moment, we are considered a major project by the South Australian government. And so the South Australian Premier has put together a task force so that all the different agencies who have to sign off on that development are in the one room, excuse me, and hopefully that helps us get that development move forward as quickly as possible. We have about 6 kilometres of coastline, and there's an aerial shot there on the left-hand side, and we believe that over time we've got the space, and if the demand is there, the capability to build multiple launch sites along that south-facing coastline. We have 1,200 hectares of land, and the launch trajectories, we can do anything really from full retrograde through sun synchronous, polar, and down to about 60 degrees, where we're limited by Kangaroo Island. So that's the Whalers Way orbital facility, which we expect to be operational in Q1 of next year. Obviously, a couple of things that are beyond our control at the moment, COVID-19 being one, and the other is the development application being approved, and then we need our launch facility license, and then we need launch permits for the launch vehicles. But we have a customer called Perigee Aerospace who will be launching with us around Q2 of next year, a South Korean company, launching a small 50 kilogram lift vehicle. And so they'll be one of our first customers from this site. The other thing to tell you is that we're also building a suborbital launch facility, a test range near Ceduna, further west from Whalers Way. It'll be one of the longest civilian overland rocket ranges available, up to about 145 kilometres trajectory to the north. And it is into pretty much uninhabited national park. To the north of that is the Woomera prohibited area, and certainly for some defence activities, it may be feasible to extend the range into that area. So 2 areas that we're developing, an orbital facility near Port Lincoln, and then this test range for testing suborbital vehicles and being able to recover them into the north. So that's it from me. Again, I'll be happy to take any questions as well.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you, Peter. Appreciate that. Thanks for jumping in the last minute as well. Really good. So look, we've got well ahead of the allocated time. So this is perfect because it actually gives us time to be able to ask some questions. So I guess the way probably best, rather than having everyone trying to talk over the top of each other, there is a facility in the chat area to raise your hand, and I'll do that myself just to show you how that looks. If it works, there we go. Can you see my little thumbnail? So if would someone like to ask a question, perhaps they could raise a hand. We can unmute you, and then. So is that Lincoln? Is that Lincoln that's just done that? Stand by. Hang on. Just looking. Anyone, any questions? I can't see any hands at this stage.
The raising hand feature is in the participants list.
Oh, okay.
At the bottom of the participants window, you can raise your hand.
Oh, while we're waiting for that, I've got a couple of questions. So Adam Gilmore, so you're looking at a launch in 2022, I believe you said. So is this a new rocket? Because I visited you about a year ago, I think, and I saw a rocket you had there in the facility you've got there. Is that a derivation of that? Is it the same rocket? Is that something else, or what are we looking at?
Yeah, Peter, that was a test rocket. We actually tried to launch that last year and we failed right at the last minute, but it was really just a technology test bed for us. So it was a stepping stone. And, you know, the vehicle that we're doing next, the thrust of the engine's about double the thrust of that rocket. And there's 4 motors on the first stage instead of 1. It's a 3-stage vehicle. That was a 1-stage vehicle. And it's about 20 times heavier and 4 times taller. So significantly bigger. That was just a baby test one.
So is the launch in 2022 going to be an all up of that full configuration, or are you going to have an incremental test program?
No, I guess one of the things that we learned kind of the hard way is you think that a baby step doesn't take very long, but it also takes a long time. So we're not going to try any more baby steps. We're going to go straight to the final vehicle.
Fantastic. Mike, or some of you might be able to help me. I can't see. Is there anyone want to ask a question? I can't see any hands.
There's questions on the chat.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
The space agency.
Raised hands by me, Kerry Doty, Angelo.
Okay.
Yeah. Peter,
It is
Mike,
allocating
I
them a
can't.
number.
Can someone else drive this? I can't.
Yeah, Mike. Sorry,
Okay.
to start with, Kerry.
Yeah, Carrie's first.
Kerry Doherty.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, Kerry. Welcome.
Yeah, okay. My question was directed towards David for Southern Launch.
Actually, it's Peter.
I'm
It's
sorry,
Peter.
Peter.
We had a last-minute
Yes,
substitution.
that's right. I'm sorry, Peter.
David, yeah.
You still there?
Yes, Kerry, go ahead.
Okay. Look, I just noticed with the Kuniba range, it looks like your downrange passes over Maralinga, the old Maralinga site. Now, what are the sort of issues surrounding that? What about recovery if something falls short in that area?
Yeah, so obviously safety is the primary concern of any launch. There are a number of sites that we need to be cognizant of. There's an old disused mine, but still has a couple of staff on it. There are some homesteads, and so before you can do a launch, obviously you need to have been in touch with those people and had the necessary activities removed from the downrange area. We'll also be able to ensure that we're targeting in the right direction, so all of the analysis will be done to look at drop zones and where they fall. So the azimuth that we might choose for a launch will again be dictated by the range of the vehicle and where it might drop.
Okay, thank you.
Fantastic. Angelo, you had a question.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I had a question to Adam.
Adam Gilmore?
Yeah. No, from
Season.
Space. Yep.
Yep.
Well, thanks for being part of this. It's been great to hear from you guys. But I was just interested on what the Space Agency's position on this in situ resource utilisation thing that has come up. And President Trump has basically said, we're mining the moon and no one's going to stop us. But where does it put us in terms of the space treaty and our response, in particular, because the only thing in town at the moment is the Artemis project. And we certainly, as you said, want to be part of it. So have you got any views, or have you established any views on that?
Angela, look, that's a great question, and I think you've really kind of hit a topical issue. Obviously, President Trump's decree, was it last week or the week before, really sets an American position in that regard. And Australia's position is very much anchored in the Moon Treaty, and the Moon Treaty sort of sets our views. As you know, that was done a long time ago. And we are considering the American statement at the moment. Obviously, how we enter into treaty statements we make about a position of celestial bodies or a decision for government. So I can't actually put out a policy matter other than that. So it's really important for me to say that the treaty actually anchors our policy perspective for that. So we're reviewing it, we're looking at it, and it's something that we'll need to we need to engage with, and it's certainly part of our conversations with NASA.
Excellent, thank you.
So complete non-answer. I appreciate that. We're absolutely cognizant of it, though. So
it'll be a particularly subject moving forward, because the Russians have basically, registered their protests for it, but the Chinese have kept quiet for obvious reasons. So it'll be interesting, and especially as Australia is so good at mining things, what could be better than to be participant with the technology we have in, prospecting the moon and other bodies. So it's going to
look. Absolutely. I mean, in situ resource utilisation is sort of one of our priority areas, and it's definitely one of the things that we're interested in. We do talk to a lot of the resource companies that do have those technologies, and a lot of them are very interested in how they might apply those technologies in space. So, look, very, very important to us, and a great question. And watch this space is about all I can say on that. No pun
Thank
intended.
you.
Fantastic. All right, we've got a question from Shane. I think it's actually for you again, Adam.
Yeah.
Shane Usher.
So this is to Adam, but then also to all the other people who have a foothold in the industry, and that relates to COVID-19. In the US, the space launching industry in particular has been designated as an essential service. And within Australia, I was wondering how that's impacting on the Australian companies. And also for me personally, later this year, I might be wanting to go to Moscow to do some preparation for an 8-month isolation mission, which may become problematic as well.
Look, it's a good question. At the moment, the essential services are being handled on a jurisdictional basis. To the best of my knowledge, obviously Australia is a federation and the different states are managing essential services in a different way. I guess one example of the role that the agency's had in this regard is to, where we've received queries from businesses, we've made sure that we've gotten them connected with the right authorities in each of the jurisdictions about whether they're considered essential and whether they're able to travel and do work and so on. So I guess we don't have any particular authority in that regard, but we do note that obviously there is a huge range of essential services that are delivered, particularly in the communications domain. For example, you just look at all of the remote working and so on that everybody needs to do around Australia. So certainly how those services are supported would be regarded as being essential. Yeah, look, in regards to your specific example about preparing for the isolation mission and so on, I can't really offer any advice sort of in this forum, but certainly happy to have a conversation about that offline.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Okay, we've got a question from Alicia. Alicia, would you like to ask it, or do you want me just to read it out? I think it's a question for everybody. Are there any future opportunities for aspiring astronauts within Australia? If so, what are the best post-schooling education paths to take to set myself up for such opportunities? I think we'd all have to know that answer. Anyone want to take a stab at that?
Oh, look, I'm happy to jump in and give you the agency's position on that. Look, we don't have a human spaceflight at this program at this point. It's in our strategy, though. At the end of the strategy, human spaceflight, it's a genuine thing. People are interested in it. People are interested in doing human spaceflight activities from Australia. We don't have a program, and it's a huge leap from where we are now to human spaceflight. So we don't want to. We do really need to crawl, walk, run in that regard. That said, somebody that's preparing for a career in and they want to be an astronaut, there's a focus on the science, the STEM, the mathematics, the engineering, those kinds of activities. They are absolutely core. You look at the
nations, there's a huge diversity of skills, capabilities, researchers, engineers that have had careers in space. And of course, we all know the story of Paul Scully-Powers and Andy Thomas being Andy Thomas in particular being the first Australian astronaut. So
different ways you can do it, but study hard and focus on the STEM skills would be my advice at this point.
Amen to that. Andrew Yasinski, you've got a question from Andrew Trieb. Do you have any comments regarding the Trump announcement and your intentions about the moon enablers? I guess this relates to your hopper system.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's referring to the mining, and one of our potential customers is obviously mining companies. We're currently not building the landers that would be necessary to haul tons and tons of moon rock back to Earth, but we would potentially be able to enable prospecting of the moon. So of course, we'll be operating under whatever the regulations that exist around the logistics of that. We've got a long timeline until we reach that point, though. So I guess in regards to that specific question, I don't have any particular comment since that's not something that's on the horizon just yet. And I'm not quite sure what lies in the future in that regard. We do believe, though, that the capabilities that we're building will be very well aligned with what mining companies would want to utilize. But yeah, like I said, we'd only operate under whatever the regulations that exist. So yeah, don't have any specific comments there, unfortunately.
Forgive my limited understanding of space mining. I don't really believe the practicality of mining things off Earth and bringing them to Earth is really where mining is really where it's at. It's more off Earth mining for use in off Earth applications, for example, fuel or building structures or spacecraft and those types of things. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Brilliant. All right. Michael Spencer, I think, is stand by. Michael, would you like to ask your question, or do you want me to read it out for you there? Someone unmuting Michael. I'm not sure whether I can't hear Michael, so I'll read his question out. You there? Okay. How simple is it for Australian launch providers to rely on overseas space situational awareness assessments for assuring safe trajectories into orbit? Would Australia benefit from establishing a sovereign space assurance capabilities for monitoring and assessing risks to Australian launched payloads? I suspect the answer would be yes. Anyone want to take a stab at that?
Yeah, I'll talk a bit. I mean, there's quite a sophisticated system already run by the Americans that the world uses, and there's been more and more countries that are contributing to that endeavour. And I think even Australia does. It's not something I'm an expert at. Adam Seidman will probably chip in, but I think even Australia is contributing to looking at what's in the skies above Australia. And I think there's going to be a move, or already is a move, from defence into the Department of Commerce or something like that in America. I don't think it's something that any country like Australia can do by itself. We're always going to rely on other countries, especially in the Northern Hemisphere, that can look for stuff as well. But it all helps. Adam Seidman, do you want to chip in with what Australia is doing on this?
Yeah, 100%. Adam, I'm not the expert, but I can offer some things. You're correct on the point that that the US Air Force is transitioning a large portion of that space situational awareness, or space domain awareness, as they call it now, from CSPOC, the Command Space Operations Command, to Joint Space Operations Command in the Department of Commerce, like you said. So the US recognises that the vast majority of space traffic is in fact commercial, and so how the US manages conjunction alerts and so on, it's very much a commercial focus, and so they've moved the large part of, or they're moving the large part of that operation into the commercial domain. But the US relies on sensors all around the Earth, not just on continental United States. Of course, you'd be aware of the Space Surveillance Telescope up in Western Australia. Of course, things like the ESA tracking station out in Western Australia, and there's a whole range of capabilities and a whole lot of capabilities that exist in Australia that are all part of that global network. So I'm sorry, I forget the details of the actual question. Australia plays an important role. There's a whole lot of firms like Electro-Optic Systems, EOS, based in Canberra, other companies like Silentium Defence down in Adelaide, looking at a passive radar system for space tracking. So there's a whole range of things that really do come together to inform that network. Part of an answer, perhaps?
Sounds good. I've got a question for Herb, if you're still there, Herb, from Newman Space.
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, I just you were talking about the fact you're going to be doing some testing, I think later this year or early next year.
Oh, this year, yes.
What will be the nature of that testing? I mean, because your electric thruster it's for in space use, right? It's not an atmospheric
correct,
use
yes.
thruster. So is that going to be in a vacuum chamber, or are you going to be launching it on something, or what's going to be?
No, it's in vacuum chambers. So we do have 2 vacuum chambers in our office. So we can do some testing there. The challenge that we are facing, and a lot of people are facing with thrusters, is you need to be able to measure the thrust. In our case, the thrust is micronewton level, so it's very, very small. So it makes it very difficult to actually measure. In addition, it's not a continuous thrust, it's a pulse system, which makes it even more difficult to measure. So we actually did a collaborative research agreement with Department of Defense last year. So they provided a thrust balance for us. So we are using that. And this is where we start collecting some data with a number of variables and unknowns still in the system. So that has allowed us to progress significantly our technical development. And so as soon as we have our current engineering model assembled, we continue that testing internally. Now, when this is done, this is only testing our own thrust balance. It's not validated. It's not a validated environment or certified environment. So we need to do a number of other tests from a performance perspective. So this we can do at Mount Stromlo, for example, at AITC, because they have a much bigger vacuum chamber. They have a different thrust balance. We can do that at ANU also. They have another vacuum chamber with another thrust balance that is certified. So that will allow us to benchmark the results on their system and our system, so provide some validation of that already. In addition to that, we need to do a lot of environmental testing, EMI testing. We also need to do vibration testing. So we have all those testings in front of us, right? So we are quite confident because we have done the TO4 levels, in our own vacuum chamber. We know the system does work. But no, with the new engineering model, we need to validate this again. We need to be able to share some data with, prospective partners or potential customers, but also like for the environmental testing, with people who want to launch with, right? So companies next door are like Innova and others, they're like, okay, fine, we can put your system, integrate your system on our CubeSat, but we want to make sure that we are not impacting anything on board, right? So we need to be able to test that and demonstrate that.
Fantastic. I've been told I've missed a question from Isaac Sims. Isaac, you there? I can't actually find a question, so if you want to unmute yourself and ask the question.
It was kind of a long-winded question, so I wanted to verbalize it rather than just write it in the chat. Sorry, Adam Seedsman, I know you're getting hammered a bit. I attended a very interesting seminar a couple of months ago about space junk, orbital debris, and the way that our orbit is filling up pretty quickly, and obviously the negative impact of a Kessler syndrome type event. But in general, as we've seen tonight, there's plenty of companies in Australia looking to go orbital. And I've read in the legislation around launching about a responsibility for the launching company to have a plan for deorbit if they're planning to orbit something. Is there any plan to incentivize companies or services that would remove stuff that's already in orbit that's dead from an agency perspective? Do you have I guess?
Well, Isaac, that's it's a really cool question. Space debris is a really challenging issue. So the question is, if you identify a piece of space debris, how do you identify who owns it? How do you differentiate between something that's inactive, that they've turned off and intend to turn back on later, and otherwise? So you start to get into some really prickly issues of international law and so on. So I guess within our sphere of influence, what we want to try to do is And I guess under the Outer Space Treaty, launching nations are the nations that are responsible for those things that they put into space. So I guess what we're trying to do is set that path going forward to make sure that Australian operators and operators of space vehicles are doing so in a responsible way, and that they do have a plan to manage that. So I guess we're dealing with that. We're dealing with that aspect that we can manage. In terms of removing or recovering debris, it's a challenge because exactly those issues that I spoke about. I mean, how you decide what's your debris, what's not your debris. I think it was the UK did an experiment in the past couple of years where they in fact released their own debris and then recovered it, because that way they knew what their debris was. So it's a challenge, and at this point, while SSA and responsible acting in space is a really important thing for the agency to do, I guess when that's a real out there goal. Yeah. So again, part of an answer, but I think it's a really great concept and a great proposal. So I think we can file that one for, or perhaps keep that one in the bottom drawer for when we do come around to that, because Kessler syndrome would be absolutely horrific, and we definitely want to make sure we don't get there.
Fantastic. I forgive everyone if I missed your question. I'm just going to try and catch up. Broden Diggle, do you want to ask your question, or do you want me to read it out from the chat there?
Yeah, sure. Happy to ask. This is for Adam Gilmore. Thanks so much for all of your talks. It's been fantastic to dial into this meeting. Never been able to come along. So Adam, how are you and your team planning on mitigating the risks and the verification or validation sort of that you'd be gaining from doing test launches when you're going to go for that big step of straight to the 4-engine, 3-stage vehicle?
Yeah, we're going to do ground tests. So we'll do tests of what the flight vehicle would be like on the ground. We're probably going to even do a vertical test, which is what most of the other rocket companies do as well. And that simulates pretty much everything right up until launch, and even launch, before you start accelerating. So it's the next best thing you can do before you do a launch. And in terms of other bits and pieces in the rocket, you've got Dacre tables and thermal vacuum chambers and stuff like that. So we're going to cost effectively test every single system of the rocket before we launch.
Awesome. Thank you.
Fantastic. I can't remember who asked it, but someone asked, I think Peter asked about any plans for expansion to Northern Australia.
Yeah, look, the site that we have is obviously suitable for polar and sun synchronous type launches and orbits. We can't, from that site, do anything that would be approaching equatorial without going over Adelaide, which wouldn't be well received. We don't have any plans ourselves to tackle the equatorial launch requirements at this stage. Some of you will be aware that Equatorial Launch Australia is a company that's building an equatorial capability up in Arnhem Land. And so we see that as to some extent complementary to what we're doing. So that if we have opportunities that are polar or sun synchronous, then obviously it's easy for us. If someone wants equatorial from us, we would say, well, no, we can't do that. But there's another site within Australia that could do it. I also understand that Queensland has looked at having a site, but I'm not quite sure where that's up to.
Fantastic. Lachlan Rees has asked about what the Spain Space Agency's current view on the development of space way stations to support future space travel. Interested in hearing on some of the launch vehicle operators, you guys, think in terms of whether you're looking for such facilities. So two parts of the question there for different people, I guess.
I'm happy to jump in on the first part. Lachlan, could I ask, way station, are you thinking Lunar Gateway kind of thing, or did you have something else in mind? What was your I just want to make sure I understand the question.
Not certain whether he's got a microphone, perhaps. I don't know. He just wrote the question in the chat. So there we go. Supporting future travels for companies to restore.
I think he means, yeah, like a Lunar Gateway.
I have feeling.
Yeah. So look, I'll talk a little bit about the Lunar Gateway. Lunar Gateway in some ways is controversial, but you know, science futurists, or I guess at the time, science fiction writers, Arthur C. Clarke and so on, have been writing about the concept of space stations, gateways, those sort of things for decades. So it's not really a new idea, but it is a huge investment. And of course, the Gateway Foundation are looking to put up a transit type station, you know, on a commercial basis. And, you know, if you haven't seen it, go and have a look at their YouTube channel. But there's a range of ideas, but NASA is very keen to get the Gateway station in place. Obviously, it's been deprioritized in order to get boots on the moon sooner. So, so that you know, we've seen that Gateway proposal kind of get smaller and smaller, but it's a hugely important piece of space infrastructure for deep space exploration. And you know, sooner or later, I think globally we'll end up with something like that, and very much in the strategic view. So, from an Australian perspective, it'd be great to see you know, Australian businesses or researchers involved in delivering that kind of technology or capability, but that one just seems to be slipping to the right a little bit from my perspective.
Yeah,
I hope that's an answer.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you're saying there, Adam. I might just chip in from Valiant Space's perspective. So yeah, getting to the moon in one shot is quite expensive, and it's quite a journey. So being able to have an outpost where you can descend from and I guess go back up to, so similar in the Apollo style rendezvous with an orbiter, that's a capability that would be a fantastic I guess simplification of having to launch a new lander every time that you want to get a customer's payload somewhere. And instead you focus on having some sort of tug that takes things from low Earth orbit out to that station. But of course, yeah, these things obviously don't always go into the full perfect ideal design or I guess project success. So yeah, I think it's going to be a little while off until that sort of capability exists. But it would definitely be a huge benefit for at least our operations, being able to reduce that risk factor.
I'll just jump in.
If I might just throw in.
Oh, you can go first if you want, Adam. Doesn't matter.
I think, thanks, Adam. It was just a quick point. So the Lunar Gateway's definitely had some very public critics. I mean, Buzz Aldrin among them, saying that he preferred a design for a lunar direct, and you can really drill quite deeply into the politics of that if you're interested. But you know, it's worth noting the Gateway design was a highly eccentric halo orbit around the moon that really creates some really interesting opportunities in the way that it orbits the moon and provides access to the poles and some good approach and departure vectors. But it does also kind of limit timing. It's not a kind of a traditional orbit as you might think of it. So there's definitely some interesting stuff that people might like to read into on that. Sorry, that's all I wanted to say, but yeah, over to you, Adam.
Yeah, all I was going to say is there's been some talk in some of the American space companies about setting up propulsion depots in low Earth orbit. And there's a lot of value for that because a lot of rockets can get to low Earth orbit quite easily, but they can't get out of low Earth orbit because you need a lot more propulsion. So I think it's quite reasonable to see some of the bigger rocket companies, when they run out of big satellites to throw up into space, they'll start taking propellant up. And SpaceX will probably be the first one. and that will be really good for deep space exploration, because you'll be able to take a like a satellite with a propulsion system up there, reload, and then go to Mars, or even further than that, or even go to the moon. There's not a lot more energy to go to the Mars than there is to the moon, actually. So I think that could become a good industry. ULA's even said publicly that they're going to pay $3,000 a kilogram for water in low Earth orbit. I think that's too low. They should probably have to pay $10,000 to $15,000, but that'd be a good business to start off with.
There's a question I've missed from Chris Malikoff. You want to ask your question, Chris, or do you want me to read it? It's to Adam D. We don't have an Adam D. We've got an Adam S and an Adam G. So I'll read the question out. Could you please elaborate a little on the tracking facilities you touched, which would be located in Tasmania? Was that you, Adam Stevenson? Why Tasmania? It's 41 degrees south latitude, a consideration.
Yeah, look, it's a good question. When we started designing the Space Infrastructure Fund, we went around and much the same as we did with the Moon to Mars consultation process, went around and spoke to a lot of businesses. We spoke to a lot of prime contractors. We spoke to international organisations, international space agencies, and so on. And we asked a lot of questions around what's the infrastructure that we really need to have in Australia? What are you missing? And we ended up with an enormous list of capabilities that were needed. One of the things that was seen as being high value to international partners, and this was very much part of both lifting, when you go back to our strategy, lifting our national capability, but also looking at our international opening doors internationally, was a high latitude tracking capability. And that, when I say high, I mean obviously low, heading down towards Tasmania, as something that benefits, for example, US West Coast launches is one place where you get some advantage, and where University of Tasmania has been doing some work. So that was seen as being the advantage for that. The Space Infrastructure Fund, very much decision of government about the priorities. So it delivers some benefits, and that's the purpose. So University of Tasmania are making those investments. They're getting some new tracking infrastructure, and that's going to get them engaged with some commercial and potentially national customers on that with that capability. So it's about all I can talk about. I know that they're still working through the technical details and ordering the technical capability. So I'm once again not the expert, but I hope that gives an answer to the question.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Chris.
Where are we up to? Mike, Ashley, I can't track where I'm at now. I've got a question for Adam Gilmore. Can you expand on the industry appetite for propellant depots? Would this be a service that Australia could provide? And what would be the sensible orbit for such a depot, primarily or inclined with major launch facilities?
Yeah, it's not something that I think Australia will do in a hurry, because it really suits the bigger launch vehicles. My analysis of the market is, for some reason I still can't fathom, most of the major rocket companies of the world are building bigger and bigger rockets, and people are not building bigger and bigger satellites. So they're either going for Moon Mars missions, which there won't be that many of those rocket launches either, or they need to look at other ways to make money from these massive rockets going into space. So the depots would be in low Earth orbit. They'd be at inclinations that could be achieved from Kennedy or other places in the US, because SpaceX is going to launch from Boca Chica, which is a similar inclination to Kennedy, actually. So yeah, anywhere from probably 28 degrees to 45 degrees would be suitable. Yeah, but we'd just be a customer of that. Like if we wanted to do a deep space mission, we'd send our third stage up there, get refueled, and then head off to Mars.
All right, look, we've got about time for 2 more questions. If anyone would like to jump in, I think I'm caught up with the chat questions, but maybe not. There's a bit of commentary going on, but I can't. Tony Law. Tony Law's got a question. Do you want to ask it, Tony, or do you want me to read it out for you there? Can someone unmute Tony, please?
Thank you.
No.
Hi to Adam Stephen again. We're going to need a lot of trained people. I know from so far we've been importing most of our technicians, engineers, avionics people. What is the agency doing to make sure that we've got locally trained people coming up for these jobs rather than employing 457 visa people?
Tony, it's a really great question, and it is something we're absolutely cognizant of. When you have a look at our strategy, we're still very much in that early phase, that phase 1, phase 2. Part of that work that we're doing is really understanding what the Australian space sector looks like and how it lines up with our roadmaps to deliver the strategy. One of the things I didn't talk about earlier is in the strategy we've got the 7 priority areas that are listed. What we're actually going to do is publish roadmaps for each of those sort of 7 areas and the vision to grow those sectors in Australia to reach that 12 billion economy. And we're absolutely cognizant that the workforce is a part of that. You don't go from having 10,000 people having up to 30,000 people without actually having the pathways for that. Most important for us is the technology and the capability pathways. And I guess once we understand that, then we're able to drill down a little bit more detail, work with our friends in departments of education, both at the state and the federal levels, and actually build the career pathways. You know, at the moment, if you want to advertise to somebody that knows how to fly a satellite, there's very few people in Australia that know how to do that and have the capability to do that. And so what we want to make sure is in the future, and we can't do that. We can't do that today. We can't do that right now because we're very focused on delivering those things that we're doing right now. But over the next couple of years, you'll see us sort of unfolding those career pathways, those education courses, getting those courses properly certified and qualified, lining up with the international standards work so that when we do offer courses here in Australia in the space domain, that they do line up with international standards. We're already seeing more universities offering space-related courses. 2 years ago, it was only the University of New South Wales that you can do it. Now there's several others that are doing Bachelor of Space type bachelor degrees. That's great. We definitely need to have that bachelor level, but we also do need the operators. We need the people that are coming out of the vocational education sector as well. And there's pathways to work in the communications sector, but we don't yet have all of those operational capabilities that we will need. I probably don't need to tell Adam how hard it is to hire the people that he needs. I guess one of the great things about the attention on space in recent years has been how it's really reversed the brain drain and how we've had quite a lot of Australian people come back to Australia from abroad after working with ESA or NASA or other space agencies. And the Australian Space Agency is no exception. We've been able to draw back some Australians into the agency, and that's really good news for us. And they really become our seed, our kernel, that we grow that capability here in Australia.
Thanks.
Fantastic. All right. Look, what I might do, everyone, I might just ask each of our presenters to just give us a 1 minute sort of final comments type of thing, and sort of anything to look out for the next month or 6 months or year. We'll just quickly whiz through that, and we've got a space news segment at the end of this. So let's go in reverse order. Peter, would you want to start off for us?
Yeah, thanks, Peter. It's been a great evening. I really enjoyed getting everyone's different views and seeing where things are moving. In terms of Southern Launch, pretty much the schedule that I mentioned is what we're hoping to achieve, which is to be operational from Whalers Way early next calendar year. And We actually have some small suborbital rockets already in country that we want to put up from our Kaniba launch site. So we're waiting for COVID-19 to go away and also to get approvals to move forward with that. We already have a payload customer for that. So it's exciting times. It's going to be fantastic to see Australian launches going off. I mean, the ideal is to see an Australian payload or an Australian rocket launched from an Australian site. I think that'd be a great way to cement the relationships that we have.
Will any of those launches be open to the public?
Yes, we'll have a viewing area, so absolutely.
Oh, sounds good. Thanks for that, Peter. Herb, do you want to have some final comments for us? Just a quick finish off.
Yeah. Look, I support strongly what has just been said. For us, we're looking for testing, as we said, and if 2022 can be the year where we have a thruster integrated in a frame from somebody else with electronic payload formation from another Australian company on the rocket from Australia and launch from Australia, that'd be the dream. So let's keep pushing in that direction, hopefully bringing new Australian trained people along us as we go. That's really what we're all aiming for, I guess.
Fantastic. Brilliant. All right, Andrew Yasinski, would you like to have a last couple of words for us here?
Yeah, thanks, Peter. It's been great to be here tonight. It's been really interesting to hear everyone's questions, hear where everyone else is at in the industry. I think just main updates on our side is probably just to stay tuned and follow us through the links on our site. We're going to be doing some live streams of our engine tests, hopefully once the COVID situation has died down a little bit, and we can get back into a little bit more of those. And we're aiming for hopefully a hopper test flight towards the end of next year. Definitely stay tuned, and would love to communicate with any of you if you interested.
So, Andrew, are you going to strap it down properly this time, or was that?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, no, we've fixed that issue, and you'll definitely be able to see that live next time. Go a lot more smoothly.
Fantastic. All right, Adam Gilmore.
Yeah, I think we're definitely talking to people about trying to get a mission together where we get an Australian satellite to launch on our rocket, out of Southern Launch. So, stay tuned to that. There's work in progress.
And just before I go off, all the links to all the presenters' sites, I believe, are in our chat window. So take a look at that. And Adam Seedsman, you're the last of our presenters here. Any last words?
Yeah, look, we're really close to having some announcements on some of the grants that we've got coming. So domestically, I'm really excited that we're going to be able to get some money out the door. It's going to help some of the businesses that I know have got some challenges at the moment. So really looking forward to seeing that. And of course, watching the NASA relationship mature. We're going to have money for our global supply chain program, so we'll be starting to work with businesses to get into NASA's supply chain from next financial year. We're going to be funding the first demonstrator programs, and that's going to be really exciting, where we can actually find those really cool things that we do here in Australia. Get some cash behind them, get them connected with NASA, but also with other collaborators here in Australia, and bring forward those demonstrator projects. That's going to be really exciting. So next couple of years, going to be absolutely massive. Notwithstanding the challenge, we've still got to come through the COVID stuff, and it's there's some tough roads ahead, but there's a lot of attention on space at the moment. I don't see that really backing away that much.
Now, are you still looking for a CEO, an agency head?
What I know, and I'm not close to the process. That's we're kind of within the agency. We're deliberately sort of kept away from the details of that. So I know that the process is underway, and that's all I can say, because I really don't know anymore. But it's a great question.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, everybody. Really appreciate that, and thank you for coming along tonight. We're going to wrap up with some space news from our correspondent Angelo De Grazia. So, Angela, are you good to go there, mate?
Can you hear me, Pete?
I've got you.
Okay. Well, yeah, I guess all very topical, and I'll kick off if you like. But everyone's talked about the moon, so it's probably the big game in town, the Artemis project. And I thought that tonight we might actually look at what NASA has really said, because a couple of weeks ago they actually put out a document on the moon initiative. So bear with me. I'll just fire this up and we'll go from there. Okay. Share. Here we go. Can everyone see that?
Yep, it's not full screen yet, but yep, we got it.
It will be in a sec. Here we go. Okay, so let me just put that to one side. All right, so let's, without further ado, let's get on with it. The moon. This is the big game in town. And it's basically from a report that's just come out from NASA. It's the NASA's plan for sustained lunar exploration and development. And it was issued on the 2nd of April. And it gives a complete picture of where NASA want to be over the next 10 years. The moon officially is the staging point to their ultimate objective, which is Mars. But there's some really interesting stuff in this. This is the first, this is where it all comes from. It comes from President Trump's directive of 2017, but it also came from the chair of the Space Council, Mike Pence, who basically said, look, we'd like a strategy from NASA shortly. And this is a response to that. The moon is the gateway to the solar system. This is pretty much out of the report. Earth's nearest planetary neighbour, profound potential to be a source of new scientific advances and, interestingly enough, economic growth. The Artemis program will lay the foundations for this sustained long-term presence on the lunar surface to be able to validate the systems before they go on to a voyage to Mars. The human presence is going to grow to use and develop the extensive resources on the moon, including its water and metal deposits. Now, Peter, you asked a question earlier about will it just be the space economy that's benefits? Well, as I understand it, there's some rare earth metals in various celestial bodies that could actually be brought back to the Earth that could be used in our computer industries and things like that. So it's not just, even though primarily it is the space economy, but there will be benefits that will be derived back here on Earth. Now, through lunar geology and chemistry and exploration, it'll enable groundbreaking scientific discoveries. So we're still talking science. We're still talking about radio astronomy from the far side of the moon. So NASA is continuing along that route. The Artemis program will similarly enable commercial opportunities on the lunar surface, beginning with the first US commercial lunar deliveries, and they're going to start next year. And I'll get to that in a minute. A core focus of Artemis. Artemis, by the way, is the lunar program, the American lunar program that eventually leads on to Mars. The core focus of Artemis is to extend the US's geostrategic and economic sphere. So there you have it. To encompass the moon with international partners and private industry. So they make no bones about it. They want American influence as far as they can get it. Specifically, the US will establish a predictable and safe process for the extraction and use of space resources under the auspices of the Outer Space Treaty. And that led to that question that I asked you, Adam, before. Trump recently signed an executive order. It said US will oppose any international effort to bar it from removing chunks of the moon, Mars or elsewhere. Others have objected. And so there's a lot of space lawyers going to be in business very shortly about trying to come up with international treaties on just how we're going to do all this. This document covers and responds to the chairman's policy, and it establishing a sustained lunar presence and taking initial steps to get to Mars. This is the overview. These missions, most importantly, like the Apollo generation, and I'm one of them, inspired a whole generation of engineers and scientists. So Artemis will do the same. And the Americans over many years have been conscious of their brain drain and want to obviously address it, and this is part of it. Again, it's going to the moon. So this is Artemis program. I'll play a quick, for those that don't know much about it, I'll play a quick video.
Orion is the vehicle that's going to take and put the next man and the first woman on the moon by 2024. It's the vehicle that has to take us out of Earth's atmosphere, safely across the expanse of 250,000 miles from the moon, put us in the lunar orbit at the Gateway Space Station, and then sit there and wait while the astronauts go down to the lunar surface for the first time since 1972. Then the astronauts will come back up to the gateway, get on Orion, come back home, re-enter Earth's atmosphere. Orion's going to be the ones who are going to get us back safely. We have to come back at lunar return velocities of Mach 32 and dissipate all that energy. So that shape of the capsule you see behind us is pretty much the same. We've got a heat shield underneath that allows us to get under the atmosphere. The big thing is when you get inside, it's 30% larger. Orion can carry 4 crew for 21 days, where Apollo was 3 crew for 14 days. Now it's also taking a lot of advantage of technology development, where now we've got glass cockpit, we've got digital displays to control all the systems and are able to give that to us in a digital form, pull apart electronic procedures and emergency function. It also has a lot of better computing power because, while it's only 25 times faster than space station computers, that's PlayStation's flying right now, but shuttle, it's 400 times faster than that. In comparison to Apollo, 4,000 times faster than the Apollo computers, because Apollo computers have less computing power than we've had in our watches. A lot more safety redundancies. It also has composite materials to be able to make it lighter. We're also able to use 3D printing to make things we couldn't make. So it's really, really going to be the next generation vehicle that allows us to have that return to the moon in 2024 and then keep going back every year after that. Make that sustained presence on that South Pole that allows us to do all the things we need to be able to be ready to go from the moon to Mars shortly thereafter.
So there you go. Now we know what the Artemis project is about. And like the gentleman said in the video, Apollo 17 was the last time we were on the moon. I don't know if that's Charlie Duke. Does anyone know, Peter? Is that Charlie? Sorry, Eugene. Not Charlie Duke, he was 16. Moving on. This is what an early Artemis expedition might look like. So a long time ago, and we're back. So the Artemis generation, everyone born after 2000 has always known a world where people have been living in space. In this decade, we'll see humans walking on the moon again. And thankfully, our next venture on the moon is a lot closer than the last time we were there. We're only talking a few years. Americans will return to the moon in 2024. Very ambitious target, unlikely to be met, but at least there's a target. Following this, NASA will develop a sustained strategic presence at the lunar South Pole called the Artemis Space Station. So that's the first takeaway in this. Starting next year, a stream of robotic precursors are going to get moving. These missions we're all equatorial region with a total transverse of, so the moon is the size of Africa, so it's a huge thing to do, a huge area. So it's going to take some exploring. It starts with American expeditions in the vicinity of the moon in 23 and landing in 24. Artemis is the core. Now this is a render. God knows how close it will be. but it's the Artemis space station of probably the 2030s. The issue now is to transition from low Earth orbit into deep space. So they've set themselves the level 0 goals. Transition US human spaceflight from low Earth orbit, advance long-term robotic exploration of the moon, land American astronauts on the moon and return them back safely, expand US human spaceflight operations at the moon to support or sustain lunar surface activities. That means the Gateway is still a prime focus for NASA. It's not dead. It's been pushed aside to get boots on the moon quick, but it becomes an integral part of their architecture. And it's a very important one, even though I know it's got its many critics. But it obviously the report talks about its continued US leadership at Mars by advancing robot access in preparation for human exploration, engage and inspire Americans. And NASA's developed a strategy for achieving these goals, a combination of robotic and human missions, architectures that build off key enabling hardware elements already in development, new technologies that will expand future options and operations, and harness competitive and cooperative energies. So they're going in there with a commercial bent. These strategies start with near-term return of humans to the moon and continue on from there. Will support a historic first human mission to Mars. Robotic missions. The NASA's new commercial lunar payload services program called CLIPS has initiated the development of robotic landers and missions, and they will start as of 2021. Contracts were awarded last year and they are continually being awarded. Here's the one that will go up in 2021, Astrobotics Peregrine lander. Again, it'll take scientific instruments for NASA to the moon, and it will start next year. Further, Intuitive Machines Nova C lander, again next year. So there's two going next year. They had a third, but Orbit Beyond actually pulled out not so long ago. So they're not flying this. And I believe they had some deal going with maybe the Israeli Bereshit program. So that'll be interesting to see where they end up.
Angela, can you just mute yourself and unmute yourself for a second? There was a little bit of feedback going on there.
Is there really? Okay. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Bear with me. Hang on. Just bear with me for 2 seconds. Okay, I think I've got rid of that.
No, it's still there. I'll just mute you. You'll just need to unmute yourself in a second. Oh no, it's still there. Okay, just keep going.
Rude.
Not really, but just keep going.
Hey? Hang on, I'm just trying to see if I can do something here. Has it improved?
No, that's right, but just keep talking and we'll just live with it, I guess.
All right, hang on. I'm struggling with this here. Let me try something else. No. I've turned down some things. Let's just see if that works. Still no good, Ashley?
Yeah, no change there. But yeah, so just keep going now.
Actually, Ashley, it stops when you talk. So I don't know whether that's something.
Yeah, that's a Zoom feature. It's just muting him down a little bit while someone else talks.
Just keep going, Mike. Angela.
Yep.
Not any better. Can you hear me? Yep.
It's absolutely fine.
Let me
And
keep
hey,
going.
Its audio's perfect at my end.
How are you going, Ash?
Yeah, just keep going.
Okay. Robotic missions. So there's another few missions coming up. NASA has also committed to using this approach to deliver its next robotic lunar rover, which is the Viper. And again, that's due probably 2023. The data produced by Viper will inform future in situ resource utilization technologies and demonstrate precision landing. The CLIPS approach will also be used to deliver large cargo elements. The CLIPS program has actually had small payloads to the moon, medium-sized payloads, but also human landers are also included in the CLIPS program. It will also validate observations and prepare for human habitation, will help with the development of terrestrial robotic mining systems and next generation power storage. Okay, moving on. This is a map that came out some years ago about the potential hydrogen-rich deposits. So if you look at the dark colours and the blue colours, people believe that's water ice. Now, if you can mine that stuff, you can make two pretty important ingredients. Clearly, you can make hydrogen, fuel, and you can make oxygen. And you've got water. Some pretty important elements in any program. This is Viper 2023, so it'll be a rover. Marston, a couple of days ago, won a lunar, another CLIPS contract to land a payload on the moon in 2022. So there's a whole series of these landers coming on stream commencing next year. Hardware is already being built for these landers. The CLIPS landers will carry a variety of instruments, including in situ resource utilization, and that will generate detailed information and on the availability and the ability to actually extract the resources. It's also about science. Clearly, the moon is a historic archive of our sun and our solar system. The oldest rocks in our region come from the moon. In situ resource utilization, God knows what it will look like, but it will be some really, amazing facilities that will eventually cover the moon's surface. The foundation for the return of the moon is NASA's Orion spacecraft and the Space Launch System. We saw that video before. There it is. There's the Space Launch System. A lot of hardware's been cut for that. They're doing stress tests, the Orion capsule. Oh, this is the rocket, by the way. This is the first Block 1 version of the SLS, but we will go on to the Block 1B. Boeing has suggested that they lift the lander and everything all on the one rocket. But in order to do that, they have to create what's called the Exploration Upper Stage, which is a more powerful 4-engine version of the stage than is used in the Block 1. Block 1 will be used to do the Apollo 8 style mission, which will be Artemis 2, and I'll talk about that. But they want to get this rocket going as quickly as possible. There's Orion. It just came out of Sandusky, I think, in Ohio, where they did a lot of thermal, EMF, and temperature testing, all passed with flying colours. So that's back at the Cape for integration into the Space Launch System. So the early Artemis missions, added to these are the two newest elements of the lunar return architecture, and that is the Gateway. And there are two contracts out for the Gateway. One is the power and propulsion module, and the other one is the habitational logistics module. They're running a bit late, which meant it's part of the reason why the Gateway was kind of side shifted a little bit. They didn't want it to run the critical path, but they are building it. Orion will deliver the first crew to the Gateway when human landing systems, the HLS capability, can enable lunar expeditions to be staged from a stable gateway or orbit. And it'll be exciting to see how that actually works. And this is a diagram from Anatoly Zak that you can find, and it kind of, this is what the gateway kind of looks like. But it will be there for ever expanding and ever increasing use. We'll move on. The early Artemis missions, the program will begin with an uncrewed flight test of the SLS and Orion. That is Artemis 1. Artemis 1 will see the SLS send an uncrewed Orion 280,000 miles from Earth, thousands of miles beyond the moon over the course of about a 3-week mission. The mission controllers on Earth will collect the data on the performance. This mission will also deploy some CubeSats and do some science there as well. And that is due, unfortunately, we all were hoping it was next year, but it probably isn't. It's probably early 2022. And that's kind of a sort of a diagram of what it's going to do and how it's going to do it. But that leads us, well, let's have a look at this. Let's have a look at this video quickly. Nothing's happening. Pretty exciting stuff. This will be followed by Artemis 2. This will be the first crewed flight of the SLS and Orion. Artemis 2 will return astronauts to the vicinity of the moon first time in 50 years. This will be an Apollo 8 moment for the new Artemis generation. At the end of the mission, NASA intends to have tested every hardware, software, and operational component of Artemis 3 except for the actual landing. Now, that's a teaser there because it suggests that the human landing system will be available. So perhaps in Artemis 2, they're going to take the whole stack to the moon, but not land. Now, I hope that's the case. Otherwise, it will just delay the mission. But so look out for that. Should be a fantastic mission, and it's been a long time coming. There's Orion. Artemis 3 is the landing. If you can believe it, we'll land the first woman and the next man on the moon. Artemis 3 will be the culmination of rigorous testing and nearly 1 million miles of flight demonstrations through Artemis 1 and 2. The human landing system acquisition is currently in progress. And as we speak, a decision is about to be made. I was hoping it would have been made over the last few days, but NASA is going to award probably to 2 contractors to develop a lander and then down select from there, presumably. Be pretty exciting stuff. And some of the landers, the people involved, as usual suspects. This is Jeff Bezos from Blue Origin, and he's proposing the Blue Moon as his lander. One disadvantage, I guess, is he does use hydrogen and liquid oxygen for that lander. I think it is hydrogen liquid oxygen, but there was a study that was done by Aerojet Rocketdyne recently that basically said you want fuels that are going to be long lasting and they're not difficult to manage like these type. But he's definitely in. He partners with Lockheed Martin, Draker Systems, and a few others to give him a real strength in this bid. We've also got, there's Blue Origin with the lander, and obviously a Lockheed Martin or some other ascent stage. Boeing, their idea is to launch it all in the one SLS rocket. The gateway, that will be established a sustained presence in the region. It is a key architecture feature of the program. The platform will offer astronauts easier crew returns, safe haven in the event of an emergency, the ability to navigate to different orbits around the moon and later, and advancement in human life support systems. So they expect a lot out of the Gateway. More importantly, the Gateway does provide the practice run for Mars, deep space. Gateway will expand to include critical contributions from the international partners. For example, Canada will put in a robotic arm, the additional habitation logistics comes from Japan. ESA put in a fair bit as well. They also put in habitation space as well as refueling capabilities. I look forward to that. And telecommunications. Russia has also expressed interest in cooperating on the Gateway via contributions of an airlock. So it really is an international affair. Hence, trying to keep the cost down a bit for the Americans with other international partners. And this is kind of what the thing will look like. But it will continually evolve and develop and be that, facility that services lunar missions and practices for Mars. The Gateway will provide next generation deep space platform to conduct science, especially outside of the Earth's radiation belts, because that's still a bit of an unknown, and people want to really get a handle on the exposure to radiation and how to deal with it. This will be an ideal place to actually test some of the ideas. The international science community has identified heliophysics, radiation and space weather as high priority investigations to conduct at the Gateway. First Gateway Logistics Services contract, well, surprisingly enough, SpaceX, and they got it with a Dragon Extra Large, right? The Dragon XL to deliver cargo. So they've got that contract and they'll be working on it. This again is part of this private-public partnership which NASA has embraced, and the commercial crew program has been late, but they've got a lot out of the investment that NASA have put in. Some calculations would tell you that if NASA had done it, it might have cost you 3 to 4 times more. Debatable points, but interesting points. So the NASA has embraced this PPP model. And there it is. There's Dragon XL. Doesn't look anything like the last Dragon, just a big cylinder. The early Artemis missions, again, through its CLIPS and other acquisition initiatives, NASA is opening up other core elements of a sustained lunar presence, including a lunar terrain vehicle. So they're not only working on the Gateway, on SLS, on Orion, but they're actually working on the lunar base. They're working on how to get around the moon. They are definitely going to stay. They're not there just as a land boots on the moon. So the lunar terrain vehicle, a souped up lunar rover, the lunar mobile habitat or habitable mobility platform, the lunar foundation service habitat, power systems, lunar in situ resource utilization systems, and the expanded Gateway. So they're working on these things as we speak. Don't know how much money they've put into it, but they're working through it. This is to ensure that the return to the moon is sustainable and leads directly to the first human missions to Mars. There's the old lunar rover from my day, and there's the new one, you know, the dune buggy that they're thinking about for the next few years. That's the first iteration. Then you get the lunar mobile habitat. So it'll be a pressurized module that allows them to traverse the moon. Now you'll see there's about 8 of them here walking around doing their stuff. Interesting concept, but it's on the board, right? They're thinking about it. Then you've got the actual more fixed lunar mobile habitat. And then you go into the structures internally in the moon, maybe some caves in the moon, whatever, and, you know, to protect from solar radiation. So some of these are in the planning. This is a picture of the South Pole region and shows sites that are permanently in shadow and that would be of interest as landing sites. So again, through their Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter mission, which, as you know, is been there for many years. They've been mapping the moon for very deliberate intent. They're going to be ready to go when they're ready to send people there. So they've got to down select some of these sites, and they're in the South Pole. And this is the kind of how they prepare for Mars. And you can see the evolution from left to right, the early missions, the early rovers, then the more enhanced rovers, and then the actual Artemis moon base. So after 2024, after Artemis 3, the overall plan is to conduct operations on and around the moon that help prepare us for the mission durations and activities that we will experience during the Mars mission. To do this, NASA will develop the base camp. It will be NASA's first sustainable foothold. NASA will initially move to a 1 to 2 month stays to learn more about the moon and the universe. It will develop new technologies that advance national industries. Interesting. And robust mobility systems will be needed. Very much the same as will be needed on Mars. So this is a great place to test. Now, this is a map of Shackleton Crater, and what they've done is they've superimposed, if anyone's been to Washington, DC, the Beltway, they've superimposed the Beltway. So if you look at this, Shackleton Crater is pretty big because the Beltway is pretty big. And here we have some concept. They're all Australians in that mining machine over there, digging the moon. One thing you do know, it will not look anything like that, but I like the vision. The Gateway will also evolve. The evolution include large volume deep space habitat, the Bigelow style inflatables. Gateway can also support the first Mars mission analogs on the lunar surface. For such missions, NASA envisages a 4-person crew traveling to the Gateway and living aboard the outpost for multi-months to simulate the outbound trip to Mars, followed by 2 crew traveling down to the lunar surface with a habitable mobility platform, while the remaining 2 crew stay aboard, again simulating that landing on Mars. The 4 crew are then reunited at the Gateway for another multi-month stay, simulating the return trip to Earth before landing. Again, great simulations for a trip to Mars. Mars is the big agenda. There's the Bigelow style inflatable. Who else was doing something like that? Was it Sierra Nevada? They've got an interesting inflatable as well. All this is dependent on capability, maturity, and availability. Yes, true. But the second one in same font, unfortunately, is the budget. I think that'll be the cruncher. After the COVID-19 issue, budget lines will be looked at more stringently, no doubt. Launch vehicle availability and system complexity. The sequence is currently envisaged. I won't go through that, but it basically goes through the unmanned robots onto lunar surface, then getting your mobility platforms moving, and then base camp, and then evolve the Gateway, make it bigger, and actually have a moon base that is sustainable. So a vibrant Earth moon, wherever the first human missions to Mars occur, it will not mean that NASA are done with the moon. NASA will continue to explore the moon indefinitely, leveraging robotic deliveries provided by the CLIPS providers. The LTV, which is the terrain vehicle, habitable mobility platform and foundation surface habitats will stay on the moon, enabling crews to live on the lunar surface for months at a time. Mars, a core purpose of Artemis Base Camp will be to demonstrate new technologies that over time will expand the capabilities and reduce the costs of lunar operations. NASA has announced the Lunar Surface Innovation Initiative, and that is to develop the in situ resource utilization strategies, surface power, excavation and construction, lunar dust mitigation in extreme environments. Other technologies are in the early development for significant long-term benefits. So again, ISRU will enable the production of fuel, water, and oxygen from local materials. For surface power, NASA's goal is to develop solar collection. And also, they've got this great new little lightweight nuclear power plant that they've got coming online. So that will make sustainability in dark areas like the South Pole quite achievable. Autonomous manufacturing, a lot of robotics are going to be needed on the moon. In particular, excavation and construction technologies. The Japanese are big, have been working on moon technologies for 30 years. So by the time we get to actually start construction on the moon, you can bet your bottom dollar the Japanese will be there. It'd be nice if Australia had a couple of niches that we could be involved with, but again, you know, this is a roadmap that the Americans are going to use. Hopefully, we'll have the ability of somehow dovetailing into some of this stuff. And Adam, your connections through NASA are going to be absolutely vital to Australia. Advanced robotics, we spoke about. In time, Artemis Base Camp will also include a hopper. So they do intend to have transport around the moon to enable widespread prospecting and widespread science and widespread discovery on the moon. Lunar Farside Radio Telescope is also being spoken about. Be a great place for one, but we'll see what comes out of that. And NASA touts its ability to lead the team. And this is one of the views of a pressurized hopper. Great way to get around on the moon. And a lunar telescope, perhaps. That's not on the far side of the moon because you can see the Earth. The initial human Mars mission, the challenge of a mission to Mars, compounded not by these distances, but by more dangerous levels and types of radiation. Mars atmosphere, while intriguing from scientific, also presents distinct challenges for getting humans to and from its surface. And I know one of our members, Len Halperin, has been big on landing on Mars with heavy payloads is not easy. And that's what I think they're getting at. The initial lunar missions will greatly inform our concept of operations for Mars. Every day in deep space increases the probability of catastrophic events occurring. So they have to design into their systems the robustness and the redundancy to cater for such events. We know they will happen. They've got to get around them. Factors NASA will continue to consider: risk to crew health, the complexity of mission operations, the complexity and cost of mission systems. NASA has targeted conducting a human mission to Mars that can be realised as soon as possible, while still ensuring that Mars surface capabilities will allow extensive exploration on the first mission. So you don't go to Mars and then come straight back. You stay there for a few months, do your thing till the orbit resynchronizes with Earth, and then you come back. So you have to have a system that's reliable. The moon will allow us to test and demonstrate all the significant parts of the journey. And they finally say, you know, the big American hoo-ha as usual, you know, will inspire the world and led by the American leadership and all the rest of it. So, but, you know, if we are to leave a legacy of greatness, hope, limitless opportunities and growth, then it's a mission we can't afford to postpone. This has gone to Vice President Mike Pence. So hopefully, and he is an advocate, hopefully they've got the fortitude to continue with it. And what's the last thing? There it is. Final objective. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Angela. I've got a question. Does anyone know what Joe Biden's space policies look like?
Does he have any?
I don't know. Haven't heard. All right. So we've run well and truly over time, everybody. What we're suggesting is we'll probably end the recording now. And if you'd like, we can keep the mics, open everyone's mics up and have a chat if people feel still up for it, or if you wish to get going. I fully understand it's been a long evening. But once again, thanks to all the speakers. Really appreciate you coming out tonight and joining us. It's been fantastic. this is a space association. We've been around for about 30 odd years, and we run monthly meetings, weekly radio show on Southern FM, but also we live stream that. All the details can be found at our website, space.asn.au. And thanks everyone for coming. So we'll just keep this going for another 6 minutes till 10 o'clock if you like.
Yeah, thanks, Peter, for inviting us out here. It's been really good to hear all this interesting stuff. Unfortunately, we have to head off, but I'm sure we'll be talking and hopefully providing more updates in the future. But yeah, really, really nice to meet everyone, and hope you all stay safe. So yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate you coming along. Appreciate it.
I was just wondering to Adam, what's the best way to contact you offline afterwards? I can post my email address there, and then you can get in contact with me.
Yeah, perhaps if we can just go through Peter Aylward, and he can get us connected.
Was that Shane?
Correct.
Haven't you paid your power bill?
I don't know. It's
Shane
worked
Usher.
for the last month, and now it's gone dark on me.
Okay.
Thanks very much. I'll actually take the opportunity to drop out now as well. Really great evening. Some really great questions. Thank you so much, everyone. It was a really great opportunity to talk about the agency and have some great questions. You guys are really important for us as a great enthusiast space to connect with the community. So I'm sure we'll be in touch going forward.
Well, thanks, Adam. Really appreciate you taking time out in the evening like this. It's great to have you on board. Thank you so much. Have a great night.
Thanks
Look
again.
after yourself.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. I see a couple of people I haven't met before. There we got there and there. Jackie Carpenter. Goodness me. How are you, Jackie? Ashley, do you want to unmute everybody? Or someone unmute everybody?
Hey, how are you?
Good, Jackie. Yourself?
Yeah, pretty good. Just trying to get the word out about Kivo. If anyone's got some students, they can make a virtual team, and it's run through JAXA on the space station, and it's free. So
Right. Okay. So the link's in the chat there, everybody, if you want to go to that.
yeah, it's really important. If we got to get teams together, like Tony Law was saying about upskilling the workforce of the future. This is for graduates at uni as well as high school kids aged 15 and over. So people that know One Giant Leap know that's what we're trying to do. So it's free. It's a brand new program, and it's just hard to get the word out with
Yeah,
COVID.
right. Okay. So they're virtual teams, so you don't have to even get off the couch. It's that's good.
That's a really good opportunity, particularly for a lot of the students who would have been involved in the rocket program and things like that, which might be on some sort of hiatus this year, and gives them something. So yeah, if we can, Peter, if you could even advertise that on the website or in other stuff, then,
Yeah, we might pop it into an email bulletin on our and whack it up on the website as well.
Yeah.
There's a link to One Giant Leap on our website. If you want to click on that, I'm sure you'll find your way to it. One Giant Leap Australia, is that right, Jackie?
If it's kivo.onegiantleapaustralia.com.
Oh, okay. All right. Yep.
The thing about it, it replaced the Zero Robotics program that used to predominantly just run out of Sydney Uni. So it's now been made national, and it's really, really cool. Because of social distancing, we can do this. They just form virtual teams. We've got till the 24th of May to get these teams together. So far across the country, we have 4 teams. So we need more than that.
Right. Okay. So is it so like students can form their own teams, or do you aim at teachers or lecturers, or how do the teams get formed?
they form their own teams.
Okay.
The minimum number of people in a team is 3. Minimum age is 15. And we have air cadets that have formed teams. We've got a uni team. We've got a couple of high school teams where kids from different high schools have just formed a team. So it doesn't even need to be from one institution.
All right. Oh, that sounds good.
Just tell him that it's the latest, with the latest Astro. It's this year.
Yeah, I already said all that.
Brilliant. All right. Anyone else? All the mics are muted. Ashley, do you want to unmute everybody if they want to say anything, or do they?
I'm sure they'll unmute themselves if they want to say something.
Cool. All right. Well, look, our next meeting is May. What did I say? May 20. Stand by. May 25th. At this stage, so 4th Monday of the month, and for those members, our AGM is on the at this stage the 18th. But once again, we'll send you all the information about that in the lead up to that. So yeah, thanks. It's been a great night, everybody. Thank you so much. It went a lot longer than we thought.
Me, I can't.
Sorry.
It's all right. Don't worry.
Hot mic.
Jackie, before you go, you said a URL there, but it was like I couldn't make out what the word was. Tilo or something.
Kibo. If you go to the chat on the left or bottom or right hand side of your Zoom screen, you'll see a link in there. Are you able to get to that? The chat box.
Kibo.onegiantleapaustralia.com.
Yeah, One Giant Leap Australia is one word. Kibo is Kibo.
That's back at 9:55 mark.
Yes, correct. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. We're going to call it a night. This will be, it has been recorded, so we're going to upload it to our YouTube channel. So once again, if you go to our website and follow links to YouTube, you'll see it there in a couple of days. If you want to go back and have a look or share it with somebody else that wasn't able to make it tonight.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. It's been a good night.
Oh, thanks, Ian. I really appreciate you coming along.
I did notice we got up to 64 participants, I think.
That's good, isn't it? Wow.
It's obviously had a lot of interest.
Yeah, that's terrific.
Yeah, I advertised it to my course.
Oh, you did? Okay. Where are you, Andrew?
I'm in the UNSW Space Masters.
Oh, right. Oh, thank you very much. Very good. Brilliant.
I don't know if that's all my people, but I don't know.
Oh, that's good. That's good to have. Oh, actually, I probably should have mentioned earlier. If people have got an area of interest that they would in the space field that they would like to present to the group, we're always open for people to present, and either can be a full presentation or just a quick 5-minute update of what you're doing or what people you know are doing. So each month we're always on the lookout for content. So if you want, just send us an email or go to our website and use a contact form there, and we'll set you up and schedule a time. And obviously, being virtual, you can be anywhere in the world. So there we go. All right. I think we might call it a night then, everyone. Thank you. I'm going to get a cup of tea now. Thanks very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, Australia.
Take care. Good night, Australia.
Bye.
Thank you, Mary.
Ashley, you want to stick
Yeah,
around?
we'll figure out what that tone was.
Thanks, guys. That was brilliant.
No worries, Andrew. Appreciate it. Thank you, buddy.
No worries. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
Michael, you'll need to stop recording.